皆さんこんにちは。コインテレグラフへようこそ。この動画ではブロックストリームのチーフストラテジーオフィサー、最高戦略責任者でもあるサムスン・モウさんとの会話を皆さんにお届けしたいと思います。で、この動画は前半なんですけど、この前半のパートでは例えばこのサムスンさんのキャリアの話だったりとか、あとはこのブロックストリーム、今ユニコーン会社というふうに言われていて、1000億円以上の会社をユニコーン会社って言うんですけど、もう時価総額がもう3000億円を超えている、もうユニコーンどころではない会社になってるんですけど、このブロックストリームがどういったものを作っているのか。で、例えばこの動画ではライトニングネットワークっていうビットコインのスケーラブルソリューションだったりとか、あとはリクイッドネットワークっていう新しいネットワークだったりとか、あとはイーサリアムなどを含むスマートコントラクトプラットフォームの問題点だったり、あとは今後のビットコインの真のポテンシャルについても語ってもらっているので、ぜひ楽しみにしてみてください。で、後半ではマイニングに関する話だったり、サテライトを使って世界中でビットコインをマイニングできたりとか、あとはエネルギーの消費の問題についても触れてたりとか、ハッシュレートの中国への集中、アメリカへの集中みたいなところの話だったりとか、あとはもちろん今後のロードマップと、あとはインフィニットフリートっていう、サムスンさんが今作っているブロックチェーンゲームがあるんですけど、その話とかね、いろいろ聞いてきたので、ぜひ後半も見てみてください。下のリンクから飛べるので、ぜひお願いします。それでは、どうぞ。Hello, Samson.Hello,
Yusuke.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming to the show. I'm super excited to have you on my show because first of all, I read your background and then you have such a interesting experience like a gaming industry, then crypto industries as well. But also you've been doing chief strategy officer, at the Blockstream that's been innovating in this blockchain, especially Bitcoin space. So I'm curious to know all about it today. So, yeah.
All right.
Awesome. So maybe before going to that, nitty gritty of what Blockstream is. By the way, I'm not technical person, and also my viewers are not super technical as well. Maybe it's gonna be good to kind of make it simplify as much as you can. But maybe to start the conversation, could you maybe tell us your story about your career? What was your career like? What led to this incredible, exciting kind of career industry?
Sure. So I guess I started out in game development. I was the manager of the balance department at Relic Entertainment, working on Dawn of War and Company of Heroes and a lot of other games. But what that group was doing was basically fine-tuning it and making the game fun to play and fair to play. So we worked on real-time strategy games. You might know StarCraft. It was more famous than some of the games that we did. But it's really important that all the different factions, they're all balanced, right? So that one faction doesn't just beat another faction outright, and the other faction can't push back. So we were really in charge of making sure the game was playable and interesting and fun. And then after that, I joined another startup doing a website building platform. It was called SiteMasher, and that was acquired by Salesforce. Then after that, I joined Ubisoft in China, and I helped them set up their studio in Western China. So this was in 2009, I think. And there was not a lot of game development happening in Western China, so we spun that up and built up a studio of 100 plus people. And then I launched a bunch of games while I was there, focusing mainly on mobile and web games. So I did a social game called The Smurfs & Co. And that was the most popular social game that Ubisoft ever did. So we were competing with EA. EA had a game called The Sim Social. So back then you look at Facebook, the ranking, Sim Social, and then my game, The Smurfs, was they're all in the top 10.
Wow. Okay.
But it's really funny because I knew EA had a studio in I think it's Playfish in Beijing and also California doing their game. And it was probably maybe 50, 60 people. And then my team doing the Smurfs was 10 people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I thought, I can probably do this outside of Ubisoft if I wanted to. And we actually did some interesting partnerships. We launched the Smurfs & Co. and another social game called Castle & Co. On Mixi, the Japanese social network.
Oh, Mixi.
Too.
No way. Okay.
Yeah. So if you Google Mixi, the Smurfs, then you'll probably find some information about that game.
Awesome.
Yeah. So then I left Ubisoft and I decided to start Pixelmatic. And that's where it kind of gets interesting. So while I was doing Pixelmatic, I read about Bitcoin in depth. I found an article talking about Bitcoin mining, and I kind of started going down the rabbit hole.
Oh.
And then an opportunity came up to join my friend's company, BTC China. It was the largest exchange in China. So Mt. Gox imploded, and then all the people went to BTC China. So for a long period of time, BTC China was like the exchange and the biggest in the world.
Right.
So I was the COO at BTC China. And then I was doing Pixelmatic the whole time. I left BTC China to join Blockstream in 2017. So that's my history.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's super interesting. I was kind of curious about this, it's such a, from outside perspective, like non-technical person perspective, like a game development and Bitcoin mining is like, well, Bitcoin is kind of different thing. Like what was it that really makes you think that, oh, this is it? Then like you basically, left the career as a game industry, right? Then move into the new one.
Still doing games.
Oh, well, but that's true. Yeah. But like, yeah, you kind of like also split the focus, in the direction. Like, what was the thing that like first time you think like, wow, this is gonna change the world, or?
Because when I first heard about Bitcoin, I only knew of it as a currency. Like I read like a lot of the mainstream media headlines. People are using Bitcoin to buy drugs and do black market deals and things like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't really dig into it further. I thought it was just like a e-money, and there have been a lot of e-monies in the past, or even virtual currencies. Like in game development, every online game typically has its own economy with its own currency, right? So it wasn't that interesting to me at first until I really dug into it, and on the mining side, because that was when I realized that anybody can participate, and the supply of Bitcoin is not controlled by any one party, but by the rules of the network. So that's very different from, say, a game. So I've done a lot of online games in my career. And typically, we need to worry about the economy. We need to worry about inflation. We need to worry about the price of items for sale, and just making sure everything works. So we're kind of like the Federal Reserve, right? As a game developer, we're trying to manage that economy. But with Bitcoin, there's nobody that does that. It just exists, and it functions based on the predefined rule set that Satoshi laid out. And that's it. And nobody can change it. So that was very interesting to me, because I thought that's never existed before. And when the opportunity came up, I just had to jump on board and go full steam, kind of like you.
Yeah. Awesome. That's it. That's really interesting. So yeah, obviously, we're gonna, after this, get into this Blockstreams doing like mining services and everything else. But also just to touch on the game side, you're building Infinite Fleet, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Infinite Fleet.
Yeah. So that's gonna come out soon in the future.
It's already out in alpha, so people can buy ships and play the alpha, and the beta will be coming out Q1 next year.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Thanks so much for sharing. And let's get into the Blockstream. What you do, and I wasn't too aware about in depth about like what you did, but like when I actually dig into it, like I realized I was bombarded with this information about the tools and technology that you guys are building. Maybe could you give us a little bit of like a brief overview of like what you're building?
Yeah, so Blockstream does a lot of things, as you've discovered. We like to say that we are a Bitcoin infrastructure company. So what that means is that we're building a lot of things on top of Bitcoin to augment Bitcoin, to make it more resilient, to build more tools that let people use Bitcoin in new, innovative, and permissionless ways. So I guess the company was founded off of the sidechains white paper to develop sidechains. And the first iteration of a sidechain from Blockstream is the Liquid network, which you may have heard of. Not to be confused with the Japanese exchange called Liquid.com.
Yeah.
But this is a network.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do work on the Lightning protocol. We were one of the first implementations of Lightning in the wild. We have Blockstream Satellite, which is a service that's broadcasting Bitcoin blocks from geosynchronous satellites in orbit to the Earth. So right now, as you're sitting there or listening to this, then you're also getting bombarded with blocks from the Bitcoin blockchain. You just have to have a satellite dish pointing to receive them. We have a number of wallets. We have the Blockstream Green wallet for power users and Aqua for iOS currently for beginners and more novice users. And we have Blockstream Mining too, our mining division, where we just announced recently that we were going to build our own ASIC. And we also have Blockstream Finance. We acquired a hedge fund called Adamant Capital, which we're rebooting to do a number of financial products. And one of those products is kind of the intersection of mining and finance. And that is the Blockstream Mining Note, or BMN, which is a security token. So that is very popular. And I think we sold out our last tranche in about 2 minutes. So there's a very high demand for innovative things built on Bitcoin. But everything we do is on Bitcoin. We don't touch altcoins or any other chains or crypto tokens or anything like that. It's all about extending Bitcoin and extending the functionality of Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's very, I realize the focus on the Bitcoin for sure. And when I see the product, especially, maybe we can go maybe one by one. The Lightning Network is the one that maybe a lot of people have heard of. And that's basically increasing, that's a sidechain. And that allows Bitcoin to be more processed much faster. And allows people...
Lightning is not a sidechain. A sidechain is a blockchain without its own native currency.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at there's a lot of chains out there, right?
Yeah.
And they all have their own currency, which they sold through ICO or various means.
Yeah.
Liquid and a Bitcoin sidechain does not have its own native currency. There is no concept of tokenomics or anything. So the currency of Liquid, the native currency of Liquid, is still Bitcoin. You lock up Bitcoin on the main chain and then you unlock it on the side chain. So as there are 21 million Bitcoin, you could only ever have 21 million Bitcoin on the Liquid network too. Yeah. So there is no additional token that you use. You transact Liquid Bitcoin, you pay for transactions in Liquid Bitcoin, just like you do pay a Bitcoin transaction with Bitcoin. But the difference is on Liquid, we have assets, and these are all confidential by default. So you can issue stable coins. We have USDT, Tether. We have a Japanese yen stablecoin issued by our partner Crypto Garage in Japan. And we have a Canadian dollar stablecoin and a euro stablecoin as well. But you can also do things like game NFTs. My game, Infinite Fleet, is doing NFTs. Like Night, another game, is doing NFTs on Liquid. We have an art website that you can mint and trade and auction off NFTs as well. But you can pretty much do a lot of things on the Liquid network. Now, the Lightning network is different. There is no chain. Everything is just peer-to-peer network. So when I transact with you on Lightning, there is no record of that. Only the settlement ends up being broadcast to the chain. And that's why Lightning is highly scalable, because you're not burdened with that need to have a blockchain. So it's commonly misunderstood that blockchains can scale. And a lot of the altcoin projects typically push that narrative, but it's actually impossible to scale a blockchain and be decentralized. Like, you can reduce the decentralization down to having it as a cluster of Amazon servers and achieve very high throughput, but then you're still a very bad, poorly designed database, right? So I think one thing is that a blockchain must be decentralized, and you should be able to run your own node. So everyone can run their own Bitcoin node down to a Raspberry Pi as a requirement for the hardware. And it's the same for a Liquid node. You can run a Liquid node on an old laptop or a Raspberry Pi too. But without that element of decentralization and the end user being able to run a node, it's not really going to be a blockchain for long, right? It'll just be centralized into Amazon or Azure or some server farm, right? So the Lightning Network is the way to scale the network. We can achieve throughput of maybe 25, 30 million transactions a second. And that's just something that could never be done on a decentralized blockchain.
Wow. Okay. That's a significant difference even compared to, like, for example, like Solana or like anything that we hear recently. So that was one thing that I wanted to kind of ask. So for example, the El Salvador started to use the Lightning network, right, for the transaction. Then I was thinking, so that's like 6 million population, and then so what if like an entire world decided to use, let's say America decided to use the big Lightning network. So then can like to what extent this Lightning network can handle. So if entire population decided to use that, then like can it handle, or is there like a certain limitation?
Yeah, I think Lightning and Liquid is the technology that will allow us to use Bitcoin on a planetary scale for day-to-day transactions and micro and nano transactions.
Oh, wow.
So it's got to be a combination of these technologies. So we often say Lightning is a layer 2 scaling solution, and we say that Liquid is a layer 2 as well. But here's where it gets really interesting, and I hope that your listeners can follow along. But on top of a Liquid asset, you can actually create a Lightning network on top of that asset. So if you have USDT, Tether, you can actually create a Lightning network on top of Tether as well. So, any asset in the network can typically have this massive throughput that would allow anybody to use Lightning, right? You can have Lightning networks also on top of Liquid Bitcoin too. And I think in the future, maybe 3 to 5 years down the road, we'll just see it being unified in a wallet. So you won't need to think about, am I making a Bitcoin transaction on chain? Am I making a Lightning transaction or a Lightning transaction on Liquid? The wallet itself would take care of that balancing for you, right? It would handle most of that heavy lifting and complexity, because Lightning also it's reaching a lot of people right now. It's being adopted by a lot of people, but it's still very complex, and you need to do things like rebalance channels. But I believe all of that complexity will be abstracted away from the end user down the road, so that it would just work. So you could think of it like back in the day when we first got the internet, right? We have to dial in, like use dial-up, right? And then if the dial-up connection is broken, you have to redial. It's just not a fun experience. But right now, we just have constant internet, right? If you're using the internet on your phone, you might be using LTE or 5G, but you're also on your home Wi-Fi. And if one of the two drops, the connection doesn't drop. It'll just flip over to the next one. So I think that's the best analogy for how Bitcoin wallets will function in the future. It'll just work. You won't need to know anything about the details behind it. And you'll just transact Bitcoin. And 10, 20 years later, you won't even think that you're transacting Bitcoin. You'll just think, I'm transacting money.
Wow, that's a really good analogy. Like, it's really easy to understand that. So okay. So Liquid network, and can issue asset. Then each asset can have Lightning. So theoretically, like each asset can have like the millions of like a transaction per second. So like it can scale to be used globally. And it's so okay, let's say that happens, right? So a lot of people started to issue a lot of tokens or a lot of assets. What about this? So this is the part that I still like try to like wrap my head around, like the smart contract part of it. Like for example, like a DeFi or like NFT marketplace and all these things happening on Ethereum because it's smart contract platform, right? And does that kind of thing also can happen in this like blockchain ecosystem as well in the future, or like is that like a different thing?
Yeah, so I think Ethereum has a very good marketing department. They've kind of co-opted the term for smart contract.
Okay.
And they've kind of expanded that definition to mean that you write a JavaScript contract and you embed it into the blockchain. But I don't believe that that method is very scalable. So we've worked with a partner in Luxembourg called Stoker. They originally were building their platform for security tokens on Ethereum. But they very quickly discovered that it's not a viable solution. Because to whitelist a new investor that would allow you, Yusuke, to invest in Project X, then they would need to spend at sometimes $100 in network fees to update that smart contract to whitelist you. But if you were only investing $100 into this project, then basically like nobody made any money. It just was washed away in the network fees, right? And also the Ethereum style of smart contract where you embed the entire thing in the chain is not really a practical method. And they know this too. This is why a lot of these Ethereum smart contracts have a backdoor or a shut-off switch, because they actually need it to be mutable. They need it to be changeable, and they need to have an emergency off. So at the end of the day, you're making a very complex system that doesn't really function well in either capacity, right? It's not scalable, it's not efficient, and it doesn't even do what it's being marketed as doing. So within the Liquid ecosystem, our approach is to do a lot of that complexity off-chain with a policy server. So if we take the example of a security token, then we have this product called Blockstream AMP. It stands for Asset Management Platform. So we handle a lot of that policy for investors, like whitelist, blacklist, vesting of shares and whatnot, all in a normal server. And we enforce those policies through a Bitcoin multisig contract. So a Bitcoin multisig transaction is a smart contract. You're taking an outside input to determine if it should be executed or not. And smart contracts in Bitcoin are actually native to the protocol. Unlike Ethereum, they're kind of bolted on. So you actually have a far more efficient and reliable method of doing these smart contracts in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and it's more efficient. So if you're an investor in Project X, I need to add you to the whitelist. I update the policy server, and then the policy server says, yes, Yusuke, you can invest, you can transact, and then the policy server will sign off in a 2 of 2 multi-sig contract and allow funds to move.
Okay, so you're saying that what's being done in, for example, other platform like so-called, well, for example, like Ethereum or Solana or something like that, can also similar platform and services also can happen in that ecosystem.
Yeah, so you can do it in different ways. Either you take the approach where I need to embed everything in the chain, or you take the approach where I just want the smart contract execution. I don't care about the contract itself. But there is also a smart contracting language for Bitcoin and on Liquid called Simplicity. And I think you've probably seen it on our website.
Right.
That's developed by Dr. Russell O'Connor, and it will bring some degree of that type of smart contracting to this ecosystem, but it's still not going to be writing something in JavaScript and sticking it in the chain. I guess it would be more lower level than that. So there are benefits and trade-offs in a way if you like doing a JavaScript contract, but I think there's also the risk of doing it the Ethereum style, which is attack surface. And we see that all the time in the DeFi world where this project got hacked, that project got hacked, this one got hacked every week. And it's because when you're having a JavaScript programmer, maybe a web developer, write a legal contract, that's not really a good mix because first of all, they're not a lawyer thinking through the legal logic of that contract. And second of all, they're a web developer, not a protocol developer. So they're probably not writing it in a very secure fashion. And that's what we see, but it seems to not matter. So
I see. Wow. Okay. That's super interesting. I didn't expect that like this kind of thing is possibility in the future. So that's super exciting. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, so I always see this argument about Bitcoin, whether this is like a store of value, like a gold 2.0, or like a currency. And then when I was looking at this product line, it seems like you guys are trying to make it so that Bitcoin as like a global currency in payment. Is that a kind of stance that you're in?
Well, I think Bitcoin is all three things. It is a store of value, medium of exchange, and a unit of account. So often, I think there is this narrative like Bitcoin is one thing, it's not the other, but it is really all three things. You just have to look at it on the correct scale. So you do see on-chain transactions where people are moving billions of dollars like through the network, right? They're doing a single transaction and they're able to move an immense amount of dollar value through that network. And that is a medium of exchange. There was this narrative during the scaling debate, block size wars, whatever you want to call it, where Bitcoin cannot be used for buying like coffee, right? But now we can do that with the Lightning Network. It did not make sense to use Bitcoin's main chain to buy coffee. It might have worked when Bitcoin was a couple of years old and no one was using it. Because when no one is using it, then the fees are very, very low, right? But if you want everyone in the world to buy coffee on the Bitcoin main chain, it just won't function. It's just not possible. And that's where Lightning comes in. And nowadays you can buy coffee in El Salvador with the Lightning Network, right? So it's just looking at it on the right scale and on the right time horizon. And the unit of account side, the unit of account for the Lightning Network is sats. So when people talk in like, send me a Lightning invoice, they're talking all in sats. And I think the potential for Lightning is really, at the end of the day, micropayments, but also nano payments. So machine-to-machine payments. Paulo, the CTO of Bitfinex, was talking about this, saying, his fridge can order him a bottle of wine, or his light bulb can do that, right? But he's joking in that regard, maybe. But the truth is, like, you could have, an internet-connected device pay another internet-connected device to do something.
Yeah.
Or even pay for its own electricity use, or there's like a number of use cases, and Lightning is what enables all of this. And there's no need for minting some token to ICO. It's just using Bitcoin without any additional bells and whistles.
I see. Wow, that's super interesting. So, today even I think Yahoo News today, just 30 minutes ago, I saw the news saying that Taco Bell will probably accept the Dogecoin payment soon, and then the argument basically was around whether maybe Dogecoin may be the global currency. Elon Musk always talk about that, right? And then XRP maybe, or Stellar. There's certain things that are trying to be global currency, but from your perspective, that's gonna basically encounter a fundamental issue where centralizations and scale and all that. Safeties and scalability. All these things basically not gonna happen in that.
Yeah, well, a lot of these things are not even decentralized. Like Ripple XRP is not decentralized at all. It's just run by a company.
Right.
So you might as well just use PayPal or Western Union.
True.
Dogecoin is merged mined with Litecoin, so it doesn't even have its own blockchain. It's just piggybacking on top of Litecoin. So I don't know. It's the world's in a very weird place today, and people like Elon Musk, who you would hope to add more clarity, are just making it more confusing. So I don't think that's good.
Okay, that's a very I can feel that. Okay, so I think that's a really interesting talk about Lightning and Liquid, but I want because time kind of has gone by, so I want to kind of get into mining side. Maybe could you tell us what you do, because I know that you've been putting a lot of money acquiring companies and all that. So can you explain what you provide, and then what you're trying to kind of solve? はい、ということでどうだったでしょうかね。ここで前半は終わりなんですけど、なんとなくこのサムスンさんのキャリアだったりとか、ブロックストリームが何をやってるのかとか、ライトニングネットワークは何なのか、リクイッドとはどういうものなのかとか、うっすらとビットコインの真のポテンシャルっていうのをね、感じられたんじゃないかなと思います。で、後半ではさっき冒頭にもありましたけど、マイニングの話だったりとか、エネルギーのコンザンプション、消費の話だったりとか、そういう結構深い話とかね、衛星を使った マイニングとか、いろんなね、今後のまたポテンシャルの話も話しているので、下のリンクから飛んで、ぜひ後半も見ていってください。ということで、ぜひ皆さん忘れずにいいねを押して、チャンネル登録をして、あとベル通知もすべて押して、それから下のリンクにね、飛んで、また後半でお会いしましょう。それでは。
Cointelegraph. Like, subscribe, and hodl.